in a continuous way, again, richen and enliven the game, make it more fun to play, so that you and me, I walk into a bar and you walk into the bar, the proverbial way we start every campaign, right? I walk into a bar. You ever notice they never have a duck on their shoulder or anything, though, like most of your good bar jokes do. But if you walk into a bar and I walk into a bar, I want us to, you're a paladin and I'm a paladin. I want people to look at me and say, you're from this culture, you're from this culture. You might still have the same God, but you look completely different. Or we walk in together and we go, oh, he's obviously tied to that God and he's bad, and he's tied to this God and I really like him. I want people to react that way. It's my idea of always going back to, if you're walking down the street and I look at you, I should be able to tell what the heck's going on right off the bat.
Love the direction.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi. My question is about, so you have cultures and how they relate to one another. Are you going to do something similar for the monsters of the world? So your ogres interacting with your hobgoblins, your goblins, your stuff like that. So there will be that side of the thing.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to last week's article. James had written in Wandering Monsters, he talked about goblinoids, the whole family of goblinoids, how hobgoblins and bugbears and goblins and all those guys related to each other in our legend and lore. And then on the visual side, we try and do the same thing of talking about how they work together. Right now, they don't. Aaron didn't know that until today. But I've basically thrown the goblinoids out the window. We're getting to start over. So much work. But that's okay, because it's going to be awesome in the end, right? But it goes right back to that thing of how do these guys relate? What are their cultures like? I even want to, again, I've been asking James, because he's my story guy. He's got the story guys. What's the culture of a goblin? Right now we sit here and say, oh, there's 25 goblins attacking such and such, and you go, oh, yay. Well, I'd really like to be able to start showing more of the world in my art, instead of just, it's always this guy fighting this guy, or this guy fighting this guy, or this guy fighting that guy. I get sick and tired of that. Does anybody else agree with that? Thank you. Would you like to be able to see more of the world? Yes. Would you like to see more of the environment? Yes. Would you like to see more of the everyday people? Yes. Oh, thank you. I like you guys. I do too. I really do. And that's one of the things Mike and I have had a lot of conversations about, and that's one of the things that we're driving towards at this moment right now. Things may change, but that's what we're looking at right now. And so I want to see that. I want to have a write-up that sits there and says, this is what goblins look like. This is what their culture is like. This is what, if they have a town or a fortress, I mean, they are goblins, right? If they have a fortress, what would it look like? So I can describe that so that we can talk about how goblins live. Now, I also want to be able to talk about how goblins live with hobgoblins, and I want to be able to show that visually. I talk a lot about the story part of it, but the thing that we do is we try and show that visually and make it work. And that's one of the big things that Aaron was constantly asking me. He'd ask me a million questions. Well, what's that look like? What's it smell like? What's it taste like? What's it feel like? Okay, he didn't ask me those questions specifically, but it was along those lines. And we'd have a lot of that interaction, because as artists, if we don't understand the motivations behind things and the ethos that's got to create it, it's hard for us to say, yes, I can create a goblin, because I go back to halflings and say, they're 3.5 feet tall, they live in the forest, these guys are adventuresome, these guys are boring and live at home. You can't create anything out of that. There's no emotional connection. So I'm always trying to get back to what's the emotional connection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Plus, you want to have enough to start with, but you want to leave enough room so that when you develop it visually, that there's oh, that's kind of cool, or oh, that's not what we expected at all. So there's that's where kind of the magic happens.
Go for it.
Okay, this is more of a feedback point more than anything else. One of my favorite books from 3rd edition was the Magic Item Compendium. I loved that you guys actually took the time to draw pictures of magic items. And that was a really cool book. I'd like to really see, and again, this is just a feedback, I'd really like to see more pictures of even mundane items.
Yes, me too.
I get this thing where, especially when I'm bringing somebody new into the game, they're like, well, what's a caltrop? And of course, everybody at the table snickers, except for them, because we all know what caltrops are, because we've been playing forever. Or, what's a halberd like? I'd like to see more of that in the game, so that we have actually, references for the new players, and even for players that, maybe aren't as advanced, or maybe we just want to see, something cool, art-wise, as far as a magic item or mundane item.
Yeah.
And I saw some of that up there. It was really
Yeah,
awesome.
I was trying to get back to it, but I skipped it apparently at some point. Oh well. Yeah. I'm just going to. I'm just going to start it over. You can watch it again. But yeah, that was one of the big things that I was talking about was when we were looking at this stuff, I asked Aaron and those guys specifically for, I want you to show me everyday items. What's a belt buckle look like? What's a necklace look like? What does a bracelet look like from this culture? And we actually broke it down by cultures. Here's these things from this culture. Here's these things from this culture. Because if I were ever to have the most amazing D&D movie in the world, I'd love to be able to sit here and say, you see that brooch that that person wears? You can go buy it over here. But if we never show that, and we never make it part of the world, you'll never see it. I love the idea that when I look at a character, I want to get beyond just, this is a fighter. I want to get into, one of the things, whether you love Wayne Reynolds or not, and I know he's one of those divisive guys, whether you love him or not, one of the things that Wayne is just stellar at is giving lots of character detail. You can look at him and say, oh, look, he's got this cup hanging off his belt. Why has he got a cup hanging off the belt? Because he's got a little bit of an alcohol problem, you notice he's got a little bit of lipstick on his collar, too, because, well, he has a little bit of a woman problem when he's drinking his beer, too. I can get a sense of who the character is, and what I like to do is I like to create these items and elements so that when I'm looking at stuff, it gives them more depth than just the, yes, I'm a fighter. It gives them a fighter with a story, and so I like to be able to tell that story visually. Hello.
Hello. Two things. First of all, I've been playing D&D and other RPGs since I was 7 years old, long time. This is the first time I've ever actually seen artwork and everything where it seems less like a setting, like a book with pages and various descriptions, more like a world with people living in it.
Yeah.
Like it's actually alive, and like there's things other than just your little party going on in the world. I think that's amazing, and it's really cool. But
I think you just said thank you, Aaron.
Oh,
yes.
thank you.
But when you guys were designing everything, did you take like an evolutionary path? Did you come up with a design and kind of go backwards in history to see how they would look or how the cultures would look even throughout the entire time?
Not yet. A lot of what we did when we were doing that, especially like the culture stuff, is we tried to pull together lots of reference. We always have to base things on real world. It's fantasy, but we always have to base things on real world. Because what I've found through my years of doing this is that people can accept. They can suspend disbelief only up to a point. So if I say, hi, this is a human being, and they dress like this, and you know what they dress, and you understand the clothing, and they have eyes that are this color, but they have blue skin, you're willing to go, oh, okay, I understand this, and I don't understand that. I'm willing to suspend disbelief for a couple minutes about that because I understand everything else and I believe in it. But if I come to you and say, you've got this guy, and it's a race you've never seen before, and it's a skin color you've never seen before, and they dress in a way you've never understood, and what you end up with is something so totally alien that it becomes hard to suspend disbelief.
Tipping point, right?
Yeah, you hit that tipping point.
Yeah.
And so what we try and do is we try and juggle the amount of real world reference with the amount of imaginary stuff. And so often when we were talking about races and stuff, we would look back into our human cultures because there's amazing stuff out there. I have just books and books and books, and my Dan, who's on my team, he's got even twice as many books as I do just about cultures out in the world. I mean, my National Geographic reference is just immense because there's crazy sheep herders in Finland that have cultures that are thousands of years old that nobody's ever seen before because unless you happen to see this drop into them, they just don't get seen, And we're trying to get all these really obscure cultures and bring them together and say, okay, these are the things that mix together. Again, poor Aaron, because I'm pulling together these vastly different references and say, okay, you see this? I like this, but I only like this, this, and this, and I don't like the rest of this stuff. And you see this? I like this and this, but I don't like the rest of this stuff. Now, figure out how to mix them. But don't make it so that I can tell that either of those were used as reference. It gets tough.
Well, the dwarves especially, with the amount of the detail, like the specific dwarves. I mean, there's different, every race, every human, it's mind-boggling how many interpretations you can have, but it has to work for everyone, and that's the challenge. But it's fun. It's fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I absolutely love it when you can see, which I can see with a lot of these, a particular piece of ornamentation that a culture wears, and if I throw in something that has that, they're able to, the players are able to say, oh, I recognize this. This must have been left here by someone
elf.
in the past. Exactly.
Yes.
Architecture, I like it for the architecture to be distinct to the culture. I know that that's not where you are yet, but
We're working on that too.
Actually, it's coming up as I say.
Yes.
So wonderful.
Perfect timing.
Yes, and just so you're aware that the ones you're seeing here, these are just human ones where we sat here and said, okay, if this culture over here, which has access to this material, this material, this material, what kind of houses would they build from those? Oh, they would build this. Now this culture over here which has access to these. Oh, and by the way, this area is really cold. This area is really hot. How does that affect it? You know. So we were trying to think of all those things with the idea again of if I dropped you into the middle of the world and then showed you and you walked into a little village, I want you to be able to say, I can guess approximately where I'm at without even having a map. Just by saying, oh, I see this type of architecture, I know what's going on. I may not be able to say it's this town, but it's up in the Sword Coast area because it matches something like this. I hate generic fantasy. There's nothing worse than I walk in, and there's this, it's a two-door house. Okay, great. And then I walk across the continent, and I walk into a city, and there's a two-door house. Okay, great. And then I cross the sea to another continent, and I walk into a town, and there's a two-door house. I don't like that, so yeah.
So with all of that, what I'm wondering is, again, let me say this way. I think it would be criminal if the only place that we can see what those final decisions are that are in your Bible is in the results of your art orders. How much commitment do you think there is beyond your team to making a lot of this detail that you're creating available to us other than visually?
So I can't answer that officially in any way, shape, or form, but I can tell you this right now. When I walked in and had to do a presentation for my CEO, and I walked in there with that stack of books and binders, and I put them all out, he looked at me and said, we have to get this out to the public. So whether it's a making of book or whether it's a World Bible or an Encyclopedia of Faerun, I don't know what it might be, but I think stuff like this is going to get out.
Okay.
And I would be really excited about it, and I'd be really excited about sharing the stuff that these guys and other artists that I've got working for me are doing, because this is the stuff that's magic to me. It's absolute magic to me. I love it.
Okay, and then just one other short one. Before 4th edition came out, there were a couple of books that gave a lot of visuals ahead of time. And some of that, we never really saw things quite at that scale afterwards. But there were a couple in particular that I'm pretty sure it was in one of those books that there was an image of a gorgeous dwarf. She was just sexy. And that's something that we as female gamers often like to see, is something that, oh, I want this to be my character because she's hot, and she's a dwarf, or she's a half-orc, or one of the races that isn't normally pictured that way. So that's a request.
So let me make sure I understand what your request is. So your request is to treat even non-humans in a beautiful manner.
If it's something that's going to be a PC race,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be every picture,
Yeah, yeah.
but there should be examples of these are real people in the world, and some of them are the beautiful members of their race, and I want to know what the standard of beauty is.
Yeah, I
For a
get that.
dwarf, I want to know that.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things I'll even commit to you is that I want to address characters as if they're real people. So I want to have skinny ones, I want to have fat ones, I want to have tall ones, I want to have short ones, I want to have buff ones, I want to have not so buff ones, where it makes sense. It obviously doesn't make sense to have I'm a fast and furious fighter who's really ripped up and do this, that, the other thing, but I'm actually really big and got a 10-gallon gut, right? That doesn't make sense to me. But now if I had a fighter who was this big barrel-chested, guy, that's awesome. We don't all come in with one size fits all, and I don't think our world should be a one size fits all. And that's one of the things one of the things I've been working to change over the last year or so, and we're starting to see that where I'm getting into things. One of my biggest fights is with my artists. And this is why, because I'm an artist too. We love to draw beautiful things. And we have a bias for what we think is beautiful. And so when I have to talk to these guys and express to them that I want some real world people in there, and to stop using their supermodel reference, and to do this and do that. So that's going to be something that's going to take time for us to change. The other thing to remember is that whatever I tell you today, if I were to start making the product today, it takes 18 months for you to see it. So just because I tell you something today and you don't see it tomorrow doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. It means it takes time for things to go through a development process. So even if I came to you today and said, everybody's going to be pink in the Forgotten Realms, you wouldn't see it for 18 months anyway, at the earliest. Actually, you'll never see everybody being pink, but that's the idea. So.
I wanted to compliment you on the male elf. I see a lot of art that shows male elves as somewhat less masculine, and I don't see anything wrong with a Brad Pitt with pointy ears. Because the guys like eye candy, and as a woman, I see nothing wrong with your Red Sonja characters. I have characters I play that I play as sexily as possible. They think they're hot even if they're a half-orc.
Why not?
And I don't see anything wrong with the eye candy for either sex.
Yeah, no, I don't. But I don't think everything should be eye candy.
No.
Can we have that agreement? Yeah.
I thought the female dwarves were beautiful and very strong-willed and mature in the art, and I like to see that.
One of the things, I had a conversation this past week, and I thought it was awesome because the guy kept talking, he was talking to me about being sexy, and I got to start to get a little bit turned off, and then he said, and he realized that I was getting turned off. He says, let me explain something to you. He says, you know what sexy means? I said, well, I have my definition. He says, great, well, let me tell you my definition. He says, my definition of sexy is attractive. He says, and I don't mean attractive as in looking at, I mean attractive as in I draw people to me. He says, I can do it through character, I can do it through the way I carry myself, I can do it through the way I express myself, I can do it through the way I dress myself, I can do it through the way my body looks. He says, but sexy is about an attitude. Sexy is about how we present ourselves to the world and how we get people to say, ooh, I want to be with that person. It's not about how small the outfit I got. And so when I look at people, when people sit here and say, I don't want things to be sexy, I go, no, 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 no. I want things to be sexy. I just don't want them to be inappropriate. Right. I want you to sit here and look at a female dwarf and go, you may not say, oh, dude, she's hot, but you sit here and say, she's awesome. Right. And I'd like to be her, or I'd want to run around with her, or, if I were going to date her, I'd date her. But I don't have to do that with a string bikini. I do that with a force of character, the way she carries herself, the look in her eye. So there's a million ways we can make things sexy without just being little bitty small bikinis. Come on, that's crazy. Especially if they're fighters, right? Yeah. Oh, let's protect the breasts, because everybody goes for the breasts to kill somebody. Right, thank you.
You're developing
Now, he makes me nervous, see, because he's not only asking a question, but he's recording me at the same time.
Yeah. Of course, so is he. So.
I know.
You're creating a visual Bible for D&D Next.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're creating visuals to define the Forgotten Realms.
So actually, let me step back for half a second. I'm creating a visual Bible for Forgotten Realms. The fact that the two of them are on the same track is more of a matter of happenstance. When they came to me, and then when I went to him, it wasn't about D&D Next at the time. It was about Forgotten Realms. Okay. We were saying we want to codify Forgotten Realms. Oh, hey, and by the way, this would be really useful for D&D Next. At the time, when we first started talking about D&D Next, we hadn't even had conversations about a setting, a world, or anything. You know, at the time, we were still thinking it's still the core world, which is what we got now. It wasn't until we were in the development that they said, hey, you know, Forgotten Realms might be a great way to start here, you know, and it's not the default world, it's just Forgotten Realms. 5e, or D&D Next, whatever the heck you want to call it this week. Because we don't have an official name, by the way. You know that, right? There is no official name? Okay. D&D Next it's a rule set. It's not a world, it's not a setting, it's just a rule set, and that's the kind of the view we're taking on. And that's why when we're doing our play testing, we're not saying, oh, in Terrell, or in Eberron, or in blah, 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 or whatever. You know, it's just, here's the rules, here's to go play them. Now, here's an adventure that's set in a world, but that's not what the rules are about. They're about the world. And so the World Bible is about Forgotten Realms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's going to be art in the D&D Next books.
Maybe.
Okay.
No, seriously. Here, stop for half a second. Let's just play a hypothetical. This is not the case. It's a hypothetical. Everything I say is hypothetical. Nothing's in stone. Remember, we talked about this. Here's a hypothetical. What if I told you I'm going to have a core book that has no art in it? None at all. It's just got rules. And I sold it to you, black and white, really minimal price. You buy your rule set, you run off. Because if you're a home gamer, you don't care what my setting is, right? You're going to make your own world anyways. All you care about is the rule set. And if you're playing in Forgotten Realms, you're going to want something else. So hypothetically, I could just sell a book that's has no art in it, it's just got rules in it. And then I could sell you a big giant tome of Forgotten Realms and say, here's all your bloody art. Hypothetically. I have absolutely no idea. Trust me, I didn't say we were doing that. I'm not saying we're doing that at all. I wouldn't even go that far as to even say we might be thinking about that. I'm just saying I don't necessarily have to. Now, if I decide to, here's a core rule book and I'm just going to put art into it, I might say it's from my Forgotten Realms stuff. But that's awesome, not a problem. It's just a core rule book. You buy it, you run off, woo, yay. A year later, 2 years later, I come out with Greyhawk. Maybe I produce a core rule book that's done in Greyhawk now. So that now you can look at it and say, okay, I'm not going to play that. I want to play this, and I wanted to have my inspiration for that one, so I picked that one up. I don't know. We're not even talking about products right now. We're not, I mean, literally, we're not talking about products right now. We're talking about rules. You know, Mike doesn't even, we've had conversations about what kind of SKU mix should we have when we launch. You don't even have rules yet, guys. Come on. I don't know.
So, but it seems fairly likely then, in a hypothetical world.
In a hypothetical world.
Where there is art in a book, in a core book.
It will probably be based from my World Bible right now.
It'll look like the Forgotten Realms.
Yes, for at least for right now, unless somebody comes to me and says, John, while you're building the Forgotten Realms Bible, you need to come up with another one. Okay. Which, crazy as it sounds, might be possible. I would scream and run from the building, but it's possible. So, you know, they might come up to me and say, oh, we're going to have a core world. I don't see it right now, but it's possible.
Hi. My question is more of a technical one. I've been noticing trends, not just in D&D, but almost everybody tends to use Photoshop to color everything now. And I find that because everybody uses the same tools and the same color palette, there's sort of like a homogeneity to a lot of the artwork out there. Is there any chance that you guys could do some like hand-drawn, hand-finished artwork in your upcoming products?
I'd love to say yes, but I'll never be able to say it. And here's the truth of it. Whether it's traditional or whether it's digital, it's a tool, right? That's how I always look at it, you know. Whether I choose to use acrylics, oils, pastels, watercolor, a Cintiq, a Wacom tablet, or they're just all tools. The goal for me in my job, and the thing that I've been asking my art directors to do, is to start looking at, and again, a lot of this will fall out when we start talking about styles later on. Because if I sit here and say, I want this style, I don't care whether you use acrylics, oils, whatever, you got to match my style. And if my style is not that photoshopped, airbrushed 1970s look, I was around in the 1970s when everything was airbrushed. I know what it look is, and that's what the Photoshop look is right now. It'll come in and it'll go. It's just the way it is. But I have to come back to, I can't tell an artist what tools to use, because the artist, if you want to make as much money as humanly possible, don't ever become an artist. You know?
I've been through that.
Yeah, well, me too. That's why I'm an art director now. Because when I got to the point when I realized that I was not awesome, but I was pretty darn good. And when I sat here and looked at how much time it took to make the money I was doing, to do the work I was doing, and I realized I could make more money flipping burgers at McDonald's, I decided that I'd rather do something else. Most of the guys who are doing in our industry who are painting, they're painting because they love it. They have a I take it back, they have a first job. And they work 40 to 60 hours at that, and then they come home and draw at night because they can't afford to live on our stuff. So the reason they use Photoshop and tools like that is because they can do them faster, they take drying times out of the mix, they can turn stuff faster, they can get more work done, so they don't have to work 120 hours a week. They can try only work 100 hours a week. So, but what I can say is, what I do want to do is start pushing for artists that use that mentality and that ethos that they pull from traditional and bring it into their digital stuff, so that when I look at it, I go, the tool's not getting in my way. You know, I don't like to see people using the blur tool or any filters, from Photoshop in there, because then it obviously looks digital to me. Right. I don't want it to look obviously digital, and Aaron, actually, why don't you chat about that one too, because I think you've got some, because the stuff that his guy's doing, some of the stuff looks very digital. Some of the stuff doesn't. You couldn't tell if it's digital or original. Right. And that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school, if you want to call it that, and I grew up, loving the Easley covers and Elmore and all these guys, and that's, since I'm the go-between. If it's distracting to me, I want the art to look good too, and I don't want it to look so digital. So we definitely share that. But from a logistical standpoint, from just being able to do the quantity of stuff, it's definitely a blessing to have Photoshop and those tools available, because, I mean, just the speed in which, and to be able to adjust and just tinker and be able to get it that look, that final look, to be able to do that. Even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would have had to have, erased a spot on your painting. I mean, it would have taken 3 days just to do what we do, and technically, we can do it sometimes in an hour to 3 hours, because you would have had to ship off or take Polaroids of the old FedEx days. When it was transitioning to digital, we were shipping stuff in FedEx packages, CDs in FedEx packages. That just seems ridiculous.
Paintings in FedEx packages.
Yeah, paintings that way too. So you'd wait days to get feedback and hope and just keep your fingers crossed. And that's why you had a core group of elite painters, because those guys were getting the jobs all the time. And if anything, it's actually opened up a lot of opportunity for many artists all around the world, which is that's a good thing, because it allows for art directors to have more of a choice to be able to get that look that they're looking for. So,
but I'm going to tell you right now, that homogeneous look that everybody has, yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. When I do a lot of portfolio reviews, one of the big things I tell artists a lot of times is, you do really nice work, it looks like 1,000 other people, what are you going to do to make it look different?
Right.
So yeah, I'm there with you. That's again, something I'm pushing. 18 months from now, you'll start to see things that are a little bit different, because I like to try and push things that way. If you all came up and stood up and said, I'm willing to pay 50% more for my product, so that I can offer artists a significant increase in their fees, so that they can take the time to do oil paintings and acrylic paintings, I'd love to do that. But guess what? I don't have that kind of money, and I can't. I think it should be ludicrous for me to say, hey, would you be willing to pay 50% more so that you can get a bunch more traditional stuff in there, so it doesn't look like Photoshop?
Well, here's the other thing.
There's that tipping point of, yeah, what would I be willing to do and what would I be willing to pay for? I love the stuff, but I can only pay so much, right?
Look at it also.
I expect it all to be original, but one, maybe the cover is a hand painted.
Most of our covers are traditional.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
My example.
Yeah, I get it though. But yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Look back at some of the old core rule books, compared that to modern stuff too, and I love some of the old stuff, but when you compare what the art styles and what was available back 20 years ago, and now we're spoiled. I think fans and myself, we're spoiled getting great art all the time now. Our expectations are a lot higher now. I think. Yeah. So we demand that it's got to be good every page now, and not just a couple good pics, in one book. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And yeah, keep asking that question. There's nothing wrong with that question, because the more you guys demand of me, the more I try and fix things.
But it is possible. Anytime you see someone abusing Photoshop and just falling back on filters, it's not necessary. You can attain a painted look, a traditional painted look that way. So
yeah. I have guys. I mean, I have guys literally who they will send me files, and I go, "Awesome, that's beautiful. I hate to ask for a change because I know you'll have to do a lot of work because I think it's traditional." And they go, "No, it's digital. It won't be that bad." Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So many of the pictures I see depict people and architecture, but will you have other objects such as maybe like dwarven graffiti or elven dolls or other things that will kind of show you what the culture is like, and the perspective of that culture on other cultures?
My answer is going to be I'd love to. It just depends on how much time I'm given. So,
we kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to touch on it even more. I mean, as deep a dive as I can do, I'd love to do. As we go through our products, I mean, we'd like to sit here and start showing more everyday stuff, and so that will definitely be a part of it. Whether it makes it into the World Bible, we'll see. So, I'd love to, yes. It's just a matter of time and money, and I don't always have both.
I have a product suggestion, so something, 18 to 20 months from now or later, but one of the things as a DM that I need to do sometimes is collect up a lot of portraits. This is the roster of NPCs that are at this party, and it's very hard to collect that up quickly for me. It's very hard to collect it up slowly, actually. There are a few products out there, but as you're creating and discarding a lot of this concept art, if you could take some of those snippets and put it together into something that could just be produced as one of these transitional products, portraits, face shots,
yeah.
I would buy that.
So, yeah, so one of the wonderful Annie Award-winning products last night was the 1,000 NPCs, and I would love to have a product similar to that, where it's here's the library of 1,000 NPCs visually. Yeah, no, I'd love to have that. One of the biggest struggles I always have all the time is I can dream up of a million books that are art books that are just filled with art. The hardest push I ever have is those are really expensive to pay for, and it's always that hard sell to get my brand teams to understand what are people willing to pay for them, and so that's the kind of stuff. Again, feedback from you guys is really important to us, either to me or to the R&D guys or whatever. If there's stuff you want to see, put it out there and throw on there. I'd love to see this, and I'd be willing to pay $60 for it, or I'd love to see this, and I'd be willing to pay, because that gives us information to go back to our teams and say, there's a desire for this, and this is what they're willing to pay for it, so that then we can say, how can we make that financially feasible? Because we have no desire not to give you that kind of stuff. We have tons of desire to give it to us. It's that idea of trying to figure out how do we make it financially feasible so that we, as an entity, can still survive financially, make it affordable for you guys so that you want to buy it, and it's useful. So it's always that finding that balance and making that game work, because I'd love to say, I want to do art books left and right. I want to have books full of stuff that you just look at and go flip, and have fun with them, look at them day after day after day, because I love art. I'd buy every damn art book I could produce. They're not going to sell it just to me, though. So I need to have other people saying, John, yeah, I want a book that's nothing but here's the world of Faerun, and here's all the cultures, and it's just got pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff, or here's a book just on Waterdeep, and it shows me every building and all the different art styles, and hey, here's this cool bar, and here's the shrine of this guy, and here's the, awesome, that'd be cool. you know. Yeah, Kickstart. Yeah, yeah, and we still, I mean, we still do all the galleries and stuff, but there's a difference between making somebody say, I have to dig through all your galleries to pull together these 500 pieces of art so I can have this collection of stuff, and versus being able to offer it. You know, one of the big things that we're looking at as we go forward into 5th edition is, or D&D Next, or whatever you want to call it, is the idea of saying, we still got a little time, is saying, how do we take assets that we create every day? Because one of the things right now is we're a very print-dependent world. We are. And so when I order art for the sense of it fits into this product. And then I order this piece of art for this product, and I order this piece of art for that product. And one of the big things that I've been discussing is the fact that I need to get out of that model and start saying, I'm creating art that's good for the brand, not art that's good for this product, so that I can take these assets, put them into a giant database somewhere, and then make them so that it makes it really easy for me to say, okay, I need 1,000 NPCs. I've already got them in the database. I pull them together, put them together, and I make a product. I don't have to create a million different things right off the bat. It makes it much more affordable. So those are discussions that are going on. 18 months from now, you might see something. I don't know. But yeah, so but still it goes back to the idea of give us feedback. If there's something you want to see, just don't tell us what you're interested in seeing. Tell us what you're interested in seeing and what you pay for it. I know that's, I hate to say that. It sounds so, you know, corporate. but it's just the way it is. You know, it's hard for me to say, yes, people are willing to do it, because they, you know, my corporate guys will say, you know, the bean counters will say, yes, but what are they willing to pay? I'm sure they'll only pay $29.95. And I'm going, no, they'll probably pay $50, $60. And you're like, no, I don't think so. They'll pay $15, $20 maybe. And I'm like, no, really, $70 or $80. And you're like, no, I think it'll be $5. And I'm like, oh. And oh, by the way, you get a $1.95 for an art budget. So, yeah. So
I'll do it.
So yeah, just give feedback's awesome. Whatever you got.
So something was said earlier about kind of a standard of beauty in
Did he say it?
cultures. I think actually this woman overviewed it. And this might be actually something for James Wyatt to actually feedback for him.
Yeah.
But I think that would be something very interesting to include with some of the cultures, of whether they're human or monsters. And I'm thinking along the lines of whether it's tattooing or piercing or scarring, because all of the characters that you saw, even some of the ones from different cultures that we've been seeing, kind of all look very Western kind of standard of beauty. I don't see, you know, scarring and piercing and tattoos and all of those types of things.
I didn't show you everything, by the way.
That also, I could see that also being true of monsters. And someone else said something that I'm wondering about, and that would be goblins, for example. If you have goblins that live in a jungle versus goblins that live in a temperate climate versus goblins that live in an Arctic climate, and that would be true of all the goblinoids, I guess, whether or not you've been looking at how they would appear or
yes. So awesome. You brought up a lot of great points. So most of the cultures that you saw here were limited to the heartlands. So just let me put that in a little bit of context, because when you sit here and say they had the Western ideal, you're right. These guys actually worked on a race which I didn't show you, and a whole different culture which has a very different non-Western look of beauty, very, very non-standard. And we, No. Read my article. It'll be coming out soon enough. So we wanted to push that, because I agree with you. Again, my thing is everybody shouldn't just be a Ren Fair knockoff. Everything shouldn't just be that I'm used to this, so it should be normal. No, if I get into other cultures, I mean, look around our world, there's other cultures. Scarification is normal. Tattooing is normal. Facial alterations is normal. When we look at the world, that's the same thing that James and I have been talking about. How do we integrate those different taboos and those different standards into the visual field? Okay, thank you. We got 5 minutes. I'll talk fast. And so, yeah, we're definitely trying to integrate that. James is aware of that. I push him on that stuff constantly, you know, just because that's my visual thing. Writers don't always think visually, so I try and push them visually. Some writers do, because they're both visuals and writers. Claudia's up here in front. And then, what was your second one? I like goblinoids. Goblinoids, yes. So I completely buy into that one too. We were having the same exact discussion on the owlbears here because I was saying, if I have an owlbear that lives in a forest, awesome, he looks like this. I have an owlbear that lives up in the tundra. Well, if he's walking around like this, that'd just be silly. So why wouldn't he look more like a polar bear owlbear? You know, and if I have an owlbear that's down in the southern tropics, wouldn't it look kind of like a honey bear owlbear? And would, you know, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with it. Cultural, environmental changes should affect the races just as much. The monsters, the creatures, the humans, the races, you know, all across the world. You should have that environment plays a key. If I just take an owlbear and drop it in every place in the world, no matter where you're at on Faerun or Terrell or whatever you're going to be, it doesn't make sense to sit here and say it looks exactly the same. I mean, if I go around the United States and look at squirrels, they don't even look all the same. You know, so why should they look the same all around the world? So yeah, we're definitely looking at that idea. One last one, and then we got to break it up. Yes, I will. I will have an open discussion about typeface and fonts. I'll have an open discussion about page layout. I'll have an open discussion about colors and textures. We're going to have an ongoing discussion. I love discussions. Okay? Really fast.
I know you said Bible. Does it have stats in it?
No, this Bible will not be related to stats. This is strictly about the world and storytelling. Let's
8 feet tall.
8 feet. Actually, let's put it into a better. Let's put it into a bigger one. If I had a 600-page book that showed me every monster in D&D, that showed not just their picture, not just their stats, but it also showed their classes and their world and their lore and their background, what would you pay for that? $100? Let's say above 50? Above 50? Above 70? Above 100? Above 150? Yeah, but that's not every monster in D&D.
No, but you have, let's say you have 5, right? So you guys are making $200 off the people that are buying it for $40 a pop. So if you got a 600-page book,
Yeah.
well, $200, you guys are willing to drop more than $100 on a 600-page book, right? That's
Yeah, it's harder to make that. It's hard to convince people to sit here and make that analogy sometimes. So it's easier for me to sit here and say, if it's that book, how much would you pay? You know, if I sit here and show you a book that thick and you put it next to 4 books, it's awesome if I can, but I can't do it in the store and say, here's this book you want to buy, and here's the sticker, and here's 4 small books. This is a great deal, really. Nobody makes that leap in the store. It's all about, I look at it and go, yeah, it's worth it. So. Yeah, that's hard to jump to. Yeah. So, awesome. Great stuff, though. Thank you very much, guys. It's been awesome. And if you found this useful, let me know. If you didn't find it useful, let me know.